Good evening, everybody, and welcome to a Victory Sunday, Monday, whenever the hell you're watching this version of Pulse of the Pack. And as you can see, we're together. We are in the same place.
We could reach out and touch each other. First time ever.
All right. Well,
and now you can see why we don't do this from the same location.
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and forget that just happened. But what we're not going to forget that happened is the 24-16 victory the Green Bay Packers had over today. The Carolina Panthers, led by Jason's favorite quarterback, Kyle Chase Allen.
Yeah. Are you also going to not pretend that your best friend from high school didn't happen?
My best friend from,
Totally Rodriguez.
I can't pretend that he didn't happen. So that's where we're at. The Packers are 8-2 going into their bye week, a much better feeling. A game that started, for those of you that are following me on social media, I took a picture before the game, and it was cloudy skies, green field, green grass, and then by the end of the game, it looked like Christmas again. As Aaron Rodgers said, winter is here, and the Packers are heading towards winter with a 8-2 record, and as it stands right now, the season doesn't end today, but if it did, the Packers would be the number 2 seed in the NFC.
Oh, I did not know about the 2 seed. That's awesome.
Yeah, so there we go. We're going to get off to a good start with that. Packers going to their bye. They'll face the San Francisco 49ers following their bye. Let's just kind of jump right into it here. First of all, today's game, much better than last week's debacle. I think that's pretty safe to say in that regard.
Not hard. Not tough.
Packers still did fall behind early. They did not have a good first possession of the game. It seems like today the theme of the game was if Green Bay didn't have penalties, they did whatever they wanted. But if they had a penalty, it was kind of drive killing, or in the case of the end of the game, which we'll get to shortly, drive extending. So I think that really it's kind of an encouraging sign, I guess, because early in the season, if you remember, they were boat racing teams off the jump and kind of hanging on for dear life at the very end. Well, today they still kind of hung on for dear life at the very end, but at least they were able to not get off to a good start, jump out to a big lead, and still kind of control the game from there. The offense eventually gets into the end zone. Aaron Jones is a star, guys, star with a capital S. Aaron Rodgers said it's time to talk about him in some MVP conversations. I don't know about that, but he's a very good player that I'm happy is on the Packers. I'd rather have him than not. 3 touchdowns today. Somebody asked, I think it was Zach Jacobson of Packer Report. He's like 14 years old, so I'm not quite sure how well-versed and how seasoned he is on
Sounds
everything.
about right.
Yeah, so with that in mind, he asked, is it too premature? Is it crazy to say Aaron Jones is top 5 running back? So I'll ask you and kind of put you on the spot. Is it?
I don't know. I mean, the way they share carries, he and Jamal Williams, it makes it an interesting question. But when he's sharing as many touches as he does and he still outputs the way he does, then yeah, I think it's safe to say that. You look at, right now as we speak, we're in Green Bay together. We both attended the game today, and it was awesome to be in the stadium together once again. Pulse of the Pack is undefeated when we're in the house.
4-0.
And, I'm watching, right now, Dalvin Cook. Every time he's touching the ball against the Dallas Cowboys, they're playing on Sunday Night Football. He's very dynamic, and he does great things with the ball. Well, that's Aaron Jones as well. So, yeah, I think it's absolutely valid. And then the other thing, too, then is, we don't have to do it right now, obviously, but go ahead and name your 5 guys right now.
Okay, so Saquon, Christian McCaffrey, Zeke,
Dalvin Cook.
And
See, and I don't know if I would. I don't know if I'd put Zeke ahead of Aaron Jones right now.
I would, but I mean, it kind of is what it is there. I think that, after that, I mean, once I get to the 5th round, unless I'm missing somebody really obvious, and that's definitely possible, but I think those guys that you mentioned are definitely the cream of the crop once you get to the beginning there. But, yeah, so Aaron Jones, really good player. That's not a surprise to anyone that has been paying attention to football for the last couple of years. Today, he finished with 13 carries for 93 yards and 3 touchdowns. Jamal Williams, 13 carries, 63 yards. He did not score. They had a chance at the end of the half, and let's kind of get into that now, just the decision-making that took place at the end of the first half. The Packers are leading 14-10, and they're inside the red zone. Jamal Williams has a false start with about 20 seconds. You can see the Packers trying to manage the clock a certain way. And they were at the 2, and Rodgers called the timeout with about 20 seconds left, and Williams has a false start on the next play that moves them back. Jimmy Graham has a touchdown reception that is nullified via review because it was ruled he didn't have both of his feet in the end zone. That was disappointing. Really big drive from Jimmy there. Something cool that we'll get to here in a moment on Jimmy Graham before getting into that drive that was pointed out to me by my brother who was watching the broadcast, which obviously I was not. But that Graham doesn't score, and then the Packers are forced to run a third down play, and Rodgers throws the ball out of the back of the end zone, but pass interference is called. And when they call pass interference, that puts the ball at the 1 yard line. I will tell you immediately what I said standing in the stands. I said, you expletive, go for it. I said, you cannot, in one sentence, say all gas, no brake, and then kick a field goal on 4th and 1 from the goal line.
Yep.
Now, I know immediately, obviously it didn't turn out well. When it doesn't turn out well, that really brings the people out saying, see, they should have kicked a field goal. Well, here's my thing. Hindsight is always 20/20, and it's very easy to say what somebody should have done after it was over. Now, I'll give credit. Guys like Nick Schmitz and some others were saying kick the field goal right away. Jason Wilde was another one saying take the 3 points. I just can't get on board with that. I think that you want pedal to the metal, and I think that you want to be aggressive and dictate to the opposing team. Now, there are instances when I think you have to read the room. You have to know what's going on. When Mike McCarthy kicks 2 field goals in Seattle in the NFC Championship game, dominant defense, the Legion of Boom, points are going to be at a premium.
Right. You get down there, you got to punch it in. You got to go for it.
Right. Here against Carolina, I was 100% saying go for it, score the touchdown. Now we'll get into the play call, the execution, and all that stuff here in a minute. But you're sitting in the stands on the other side of me. What are you thinking as they're debating whether or not to send the offense back on the field?
Same thing. Go for it, because the offense was moving the ball, the defense was doing enough, and again, it's Kyle Chase Allen throwing the football for the Panthers, and he was floating them all day long, and it just didn't look like he settled into the offense well, but he wasn't playmaking. I mean, he moved around, he ran a little bit. Okay, fine. Side note, I think I might have mentioned this in a previous show. He actually played his high school football right down the street from where I live in the Phoenix area, and he didn't pick the correct high school. If you know the Scottsdale and the Phoenix high school football landscape, he did not pick the right school, which would have been my alma mater. So obviously there were some mistakes there, but in all seriousness, you go for it. You're on the 1 yard line. You're a 7-2 football team coming off of a complete clunker last week. You got to go into the bye with some momentum. You got to go into the bye and get your offensive line some juice, some mojo. They've struggled a little bit. David Bakhtiari, we'll talk about him probably in a little bit. It's kind of interesting that he's one guy that a lot of people out there seem to think will really benefit from this bye week. So I like the call. I was totally fine with it. And whether they made it or not, because I still was confident, listen, you're in the lead. If they were down, I don't know. It's maybe a little bit of a different call. But those 3 points, we've been through too many scenarios where they've kicked a field goal and it's come back to bite them. So
yeah, and I knew at the end of the game when it's 24-16, and I could hear the people in the back of my head say, those 3 points would have mattered. Well, yeah, but if they execute and score the touchdown, this also doesn't really matter.
Right.
So, so the play call was a dive play to Jamal Williams, and David Bakhtiari just whiffs on Gerald McCoy. McCoy said that he read a key that said he knew what was coming, which, okay, smart football player, he's a veteran, those kinds of things. Even if he knows what's coming, if Bakhtiari can at least get a hand on him, he gives the play a chance. Here's my beef with the play call is Jamal Williams is a good player. Aaron Jones is better. I don't think there's any question there. And Devontae Adams is your best receiver. He's not on the field. Aaron Jones is not on the field. So you've taken your 2 best offensive weapons and put them on the sideline for a big play. And ultimately they don't get it. Gets stuffed before halftime and never really even had a chance. And honestly, they had a chance to call Williams for another false start that would have actually bailed the Packers out had they called it and would have given them those 3 points that they end up missing on. But they didn't call it. The play call was rough. I think that the process was right. I think the result was poor. I think that's what you have to look at when you're objectively trying to say what the head coach did, whether or not that was right or wrong. And I think the process was right. I like the idea of being aggressive. I do wonder if that got him a little gun shy later in the game, which we'll get to here in a moment. One thing that stood out to me, so Jimmy Graham, the cool thing that I was told about today was Jimmy Graham had a 50 or about a 48-yard or something like that play down the seam. Mm-hmm. And Troy Aikman, I guess, pointed out on the broadcast that Rodgers had told Allison to kind of sit down at the sticks, which caused Luke Kuechly to jump that route, which left Graham open up the seam, and then he had some play yards after the catch, which I don't think he could do that anymore. But Jimmy Graham kind of shows some like little flashes every now and again that makes you think like, okay, he's still got a little bit. Now, granted, he's not worth the contract he's getting. I know he's like a whooping boy for Packers fans, but he does a few things each and every week and then of course he follows that up by screwing up not getting his feet down in the end zone for
that was a tough catch, tight coverage. That would have been a tough one. Jimmy Graham in previous years, or maybe even 3 years ago, might possibly have a chance to house that catch, but he just doesn't run very well anymore. But he did drag 2 or 3 defenders with him, so he's still doing that. And one thing that we haven't talked about or given him credit for in the last couple shows is that he actually is blocking a little bit better. I don't know if he heard everybody's griping and complaining, including our own, and just decided to step up and be that guy. I mean, he's a captain of this team. He's still seen as a leader. So for him to go out there and make some plays like that, I think is going to be really big. And I also still think he can be, with his big body and his desire to win, and the team's winning, the effort's different. When things get cold and defenses tighten up a little bit, and especially when they get into, hopefully we're talking about some postseason, a guy like that, he's going to have to start winning some of his one-on-one matchups. He's had some tough drops in tight situations. That goal line play you mentioned, that's a bummer. It's a bummer. From where we were sitting in the stadium in the stands, it looked like it was a catch, but we don't have the benefit of all the replay and everything else that TV does. So you give him his due. It was a decent throw by Rodgers too to give him a chance.
Well, at 8 wins, you're talking postseason now. I mean, they're really 2 wins away from probably ensuring they're at least in the playoffs.
But then I also have seen, because of the way everyone's playing well, and I don't know what's happening in the Vikings game right now, but there was some talk about the potential of, if things continue on the trajectory that they are. And the Saints lost to the Falcons, so they picked up another loss. And, there's still plenty of time for San Francisco to come back down to earth a little bit, and some of these other teams. But there was some talk about 11 wins maybe not getting everybody into the playoffs this year, which is crazy to think about because the NFC is so wide open. But you'd have to think, like you said, 10 or 11 gets you in, I hope.
You would think, you would hope. I would imagine. No, most of the times it does. The Saints game is another example of don't put the cart before the horse. It's funny, after Green Bay loses to the Chargers last week, I've got all these people on my timeline talking about games they can't win, games they'll lose, games that will record bowl. Are we good enough to even get to 10-6? Are we good enough to get to 9-7? And then now they're winning, and people are talking like, oh, they could be 14-2. So it's a week-to-week league. It's really it's almost quarter by quarter with some of these games. But the Saints, they were on a 6-game winning streak. The Falcons were on a 6-game losing streak, and the Falcons kind of blew the doors off the Saints. Really, if we're being honest. The Saints couldn't do anything. In New Orleans. So it's a week-to-week league. There's a big game tomorrow on Monday night, the Seahawks and the Seahawks and the 49ers. That'll be interesting in terms of some NFC supremacy there. The Packers will obviously get a good look at the 49ers after they have their layup game next week against the Cardinals, Jason's other favorite team. Yeah. So something else that was interesting that I think stood out today on the offense is now the emergence and the change, and I think it's a positive thing, is that Matt LaFleur really does seem to be, if somebody earns more snaps, they get more snaps. And Alan Lazard, is the example of that. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, some are speculating he's still injured and being worked back slowly. I'm going with he just hasn't been very good. I mean, there's no production there to justify keeping him on the field when guys like Jake Kumerow and Alan Lazard have been outperforming him, and those guys, the snap counts today will reflect that. The snap counts aren't out as we record this, but I can tell you from looking at it, they both Kumerow and Lazard both out-targeted, and the snap count's going to reflect that Alan Lazard is this team's number 2 wide receiver right now. So kind of a cool story to watch. Doesn't make the team out of camp. Is signed off the practice squad almost immediately because I think a team was trying to sign him was the deal. He kind of bides his time a little bit getting onto the field. And then as he's gotten on the field, he's made a play, and that's gotten him some more playing time.
That would have been a huge, huge nightmare we'd all be dealing with right now if some other team had scooped him up and he goes and gets productive and starts playing well for another team when this team has had some major wide receiver issues with Devontae Adams when he was out. Now he's back. And don't forget, next season, we're getting ahead of ourselves right now, but Equanimeous St. Brown comes back, so that could potentially be a good problem for the Packers to have. But I also expect them to address the wide receiver position in the draft as well. So now that's looking very, very far ahead. But yeah, Lazard has earned his snaps. I mean, it was Jimmy Graham and Aaron Jones off, and Mercedes Lewis and Alan Lazard on the field. And it just seemed like that was the personnel swapping that was going on all day. I was pretty close to the field, so just kind of watching that. And Aaron Rodgers really trusts 13 a lot. And he made a huge catch early on. Before the offense started going, I think that catch Lazard had kind of ignited the fire and kind of started the offense moving. So that was a nice thing to see there. And he's definitely needs to be out there, needs to play more. Speaking of the wide receiver position, so Geronimo Allison still's getting some balls with a chance to make plays with his feet, and it just doesn't seem like he can really do it. And that's a tough thing because I think you're shaking your head, and I think what you're thinking is he doesn't have the athleticism. Don't put him in that spot. What you do is use his intelligence and his, when he made big plays over the last couple of years. Last season, he makes a huge catch against the Bears in week 1. That was a deep ball. He has a huge, deep, long touchdown against the Redskins in, week 3? That was a deep ball. So he's not running past anybody. But when he does get behind somebody, maybe try that and get him deep. If Valdez-Scantling isn't going to be the guy, tough thing was 83 gets a ball thrown his way down the middle of the field. Rodgers gives him a chance to go up and make a play. It was a contested throw, so everybody who's talking about Aaron Rodgers not taking enough chances and being safe and caring more about his interception stats, I saw at least 2 or 3 balls today that the Panthers could have picked off and didn't. And I think if Valdez-Scantling leaves his feet and gets up high and uses his size, he's got a chance to bring that ball down. So it's little things like that maybe are kind of keeping him out of favor in getting more snaps over Lazard and even Kumaro, like you said.
Yeah, he hasn't. I can't think of a time, now granted, just off the top of my head, that Valdez-Scantling has made a contested catch like that. If he's made play, I shouldn't say that. He has had a couple. This year he really hasn't. And he's really struggled. This is a guy who was supposed to be the guy that takes a second-year leap. He's got some ability, certainly. You mentioned Geronimo Allison. Can we please stop doing the bubble screen, let him make a play at the line of scrimmage thing?
Unless it's literally 1 yard that they need.
Right. Allison's a possession receiver, knows where to be, finds the hole in the zone type stuff. That's what he's good at. Mm-hmm. Asking him to get yards after the catch and make men miss, that's not his thing, and he's not going to be good at that. So in terms of the offense, I think we're going to leave it there. The Packers scored 24 points today. I'm going to remind you that today's show is unofficially sponsored by Subway Sandwiches. And I say unofficially sponsored because I never asked them to be our sponsor. So here you go, some free advertisement for Subway Sandwiches here in the Green Bay, Wisconsin area. Defense. A mixed bag. 16 points. 20 touches. 140 yards. 5 yards per touch for Christian McCaffrey.
Didn't seem like it, though.
No, and that was kind of the thing where, so you guys go ahead and make fun of me. It's at Packer Report. It's on the internet. I picked the Panthers to win today, and the reason was because...
Negative Nelly.
Negative Nelly. I'm the negative one. What the hell is this world coming to, apparently? But I picked Carolina to win because I listened to my partner, who often says, this game is all about...
matchups.
That's right. So the Packers have a horrendous run defense, and they're facing maybe the best running back in the league in Christian McCaffrey. They're not very good as far as linebackers go. Christian McCaffrey is a bona fide weapon. And then you throw in that Greg Olson's old ass is still going to be making plays when his son JJ makes it to the NFL 15 years from now. So I just thought that was a recipe for Green Bay to not be able to make enough plays on defense. And Carolina has a pretty good defense. And I just have a hard time picking a team based on the fact that I think they'll be able to get turnovers. But this Green Bay defense really is a turnover machine. They moved to 7-0 this season when they force at least one turnover. Those of you that are mathematicians, that means 70% of games they've played in this year, they've forced a turnover. Mm-hmm. Now, the problem is they've lost 2 games when they haven't forced a turnover. That means they're 1-2 in games when they haven't forced a turnover. So when you start playing some better teams in the playoffs, you're facing Drew Brees, Russell Wilson, maybe not Jimmy Garoppolo, but some of those better players.
A little bit of shade coming at the Packers' next opponent in 2 weeks.
When you start doing stuff like that, you're not going to be able to get the turnovers. But today, an interception from Tremont Williams in the end zone and a ridiculous fumble by Chase Allen.
Chase Allen.
I don't even know why did.
All right, so basically what happened was after the game, I came up and one of my first comments to Jake was that Chase kept floating the ball and he gave the Packers defensive backs more time and easy chances to knock passes away. I don't know why I kept calling him Chase. He looks like a Chase. I don't know.
I looked at him and my response was, "Who the hell is Chase?"
So he's always going to be Kyle Chase Allen at this point.
There we go.
But I mean, defensively, that's the thing that you said there too, and I think Jair could have had it. Would have been a tough catch, and it's snowing.
So I'm trying to get.
Would have been a touchdown. I mean, I'm trying to give the benefit of the doubt there.
I won't catch the damn ball and end the game.
If there's somebody who needed to make a play like that, though, it's Jair, and he's been okay, and I think he's kind of sneaky, gets his job done from the standpoint of that he doesn't get thrown to as much because he does cover well, but he has also struggled a little bit. I didn't think he played particularly well last week against the Chargers. He drops the interception today, and it's like, look, if you're going to do that and you're going to be the go-for-the-ball guy and you're going to be the ball hawk and you want to be an all-pro, you have to make plays like that. Even if you're not going to house it, which I think he would have, that seals the game right there. And I just remember when he dropped the ball, I literally, while everybody was still standing waiting for the next snap, sank down into my seat and just buried my head between my knees because I just was so worried that was going to come back to bite them. But he, needs a big play there. And yeah, I mean the turnovers, and I think the turnovers also come from the Packers getting pressure on the passer. And I don't know if offensive lines have just kind of figured out how to slow down the edges. There was a lot of snaps played today. No, Preston Smith had a sack. Kenny Clark comes in and finally has a sack. He made a big impression in the middle of that defensive line. I think he heard everybody complaining about him not playing as well, or maybe he's getting a little bit healthier. And if he comes back after the bye and just balls out, I think we can all safely assume he was hurt and dinged up a little bit. But the pressure's got to kind of get there, and I think that's what manufactures some of those turnovers. It's a 1-2 punch. Fortunately, the Packers were able to turn on at least enough heat today to keep Chase off his game.
Yeah, they were. And you mentioned Kenny Clark, and I want to get there because I made a joke during the game that Kenny Clark was giving a lot of Packers Twitter the middle finger today because they were starting to get some whispers that were getting a little louder that Kenny Clark hasn't had some of the gaudy numbers, and is he playing as well? And, some people look into the metrics and all that kind of stuff. Paul Brettel wrote a great story at Dairyland Express talking about how Kenny Clark's still having a good year. Mike Pettin went out of his way to say Kenny Clark is still doing well. He's still doing the right things. Clark was very impactful today. He had half a sack. I guess he shares that with pretty much a third of the defense because almost everybody was on top of Chase
that was
Allen
a wall. That was a great man on third down. That was a huge sack.
Mm-hmm.
Huge
it was. And that's something that I think that turnovers are not necessarily sustainable, but making big plays like that are. And, I mean, there's things about this Green Bay defense to be concerned about. They gave up a lot of big plays, blown coverages. I mean, we're talking it's, November 10th. It's week 10. A little late in the year to be busting coverages like that. But they do have good players on their team, and some of their good players are starting to play better. And if Kenny Clark can play like that, it'll free up Preston and Zadarius Smith because interior pressure has been an issue this season. The Packers have a boatload of sacks, but 2/3 of them belong to the Smith brothers. And eventually, you're going to need some help. The teams that have really, really good pass rushes are the ones that get it from all over the place. The Giants were able to get it from Strahan and Umenyiora, and they bumped Justin Tuck inside, and just some of those types of names to bring up a couple. But it was good to see Kenny Clark going today. He's a big part of what they do on defense. I'm not going to say they bottled up Christian McCaffrey, but kind of the big thing was just making sure he doesn't ruin the game. And 20 carries, 108 yards rushing, and a touchdown, a long run of 18. He had, 6 catches for 33 yards. That's where I was really the most concerned about him was
in the passing
game. And he really wasn't. The Packers did a good job when the Panthers threw him some screens.
Being there.
And they really never, I kind of joked, I think it was on Pack-A-Day that you kind of hope that there's going to be a time where you see Christian McCaffrey in the passing game matched up on a linebacker and you're just going to pray. And they never really did. And if they did get the matchup, then they never really got it. They had a chance. Chase Allen missed McCaffrey before the goal line stand. Missed him on a play where he was open, but there was some pressure on him. And Zadarius Smith has to lead the team in almost sacks.
Oh, man.
Because between him today, Darnell Savage missed one. I think Fackrell missed one. I almost forgot that Cam Newton wasn't playing today because of the way that Allen was able
Soon to be former Panther Cam Newton, yeah.
I'm not so sure about that yet.
Okay.
But we'll see what happens.
All right.
But
that's the thing, though, to that point. There were at least 2 plays, and I think it was Zadarius both times, where Kyle Allen did have to kind of throw the ball away. He threw one that McCaffrey was kind of open in the flat, but he overthrew him by a mile because he had to get rid of the ball, and it was just like he was basically just shot putting it away, so he didn't take a bad sack. And then there was another play where the pressure got into and almost got to Allen. His arm got tapped, and he ended up throwing a couple of ducks. So, I mean, the pressure was good. That's the 1-2 punch. The 2 punches, then you create some of those turnovers, and the Packers were able to generate a couple of those. Nice. Adrian Amos probably should have picked that ball off himself, but he went ahead and gave one to his teammate Tramon Williams. And as longtime Packers fans, we probably all were very happy to see number 38 get a pick in that game. But that was one of the good byproducts of some of that pressure there. But they had a good plan, and the biggest thing was they didn't. I saw the Packers actually kind of fool and create some really good matchups by getting Aaron Jones out in space. And at one point, I think I saw a linebacker lined up across from Devontae Adams. They had a safety shaded over to help him. But that's creating some of those mismatches where I didn't see the Packers. They had a sound plan for McCaffrey today. And like we said, and everybody said, look, he's going to get his. You cannot completely stop a player like that. I guess unless you're the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but I'm fine. Again, it was kind of the perfect plan of, look, let him get all of his yards between the 10-yard lines and then try to keep him out of the end zone, which unfortunately they didn't on one occasion, but when it really mattered, they did.
They did, and that's something about this Packers defense. I think that if you've noticed, when it's money time, they're there more often than they're not. And we'll get to that here in a minute. One thing I wanted to talk about real quick, I said we were going to defense, but I want to go back to offense. So the Packers' last possession of the game, it's 4th and 3, and they either, I don't know if it was intentional. It's kind of hard to tell in the stands if they're doing that on purpose or not. But they took a delay of game penalty that the Panthers ended up doing back to let them punt. But I do wonder if Matt LaFleur was a little gun-shy to go for it. Because if he goes for it and they get it, it ices the game. But they weren't able to do that. So they took the penalty. I was wondering if he was a little gun-shy. So the Panthers get the ball back, and, well, things get a little dicey from there. They get to the 2-minute warning. They're moving down the field. Preston, Zadarius Smith, Kyler Fackrell, keep getting Kenny Clark. They keep getting pressure, but they can't get Allen on the ground and really ice the game and put it away. So the Panthers get the ball. It's 4th and 1 from the 3-yard line, and I think there was about 16 seconds left less than that, when this play happened. Kyle Allen throws a pass that's incomplete. He's under intense pressure immediately, and they call Preston Smith for offsides. So we go from that to 4 seconds. There was 9 seconds left when that play happened. There's 4 seconds left when we get to this play, and I think it's fitting, and it's the perfect way for the Packers to win this game. There's 4 seconds left. Nobody has any timeouts left. The Panthers will have to go for 2 if they score here, but it's their way to extend the game. My brother texted me before the game and said, or before the play, and said, put Jair Alexander on Christian McCaffrey. I don't even give a shit at this point. Like, that's the guy that they're going to go to. Well, after the game, Jair Alexander said in the locker room that teams go to their best players. I talk about that all the time on this show, where your money downs go to your money players. The Packers on 3rd down are going to target Devontae Adams because, duh. Well, in this case, the Panthers ran a draw play to Christian McCaffrey. So, okay, a little element of surprise because you're thinking probably a pass play. You have to throw the ball into the end zone. In this case, there's no timeouts left. And if you get stopped, the game's over. There's no anything else, okay? Packers' weakness.
Rush defense.
Panthers' strength.
In the middle, too. Yeah,
in the middle.
Yep.
And they stopped him.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if Green Bay was going to win this game, that's a really good way to do that. So the goal line stand, finally, after I looked around, and of course it had to go under review, there wasn't enough to overturn it. Blake Martinez said after the game in the locker room that there's no way he was in because Martinez was standing in the end zone and he was behind where I was.
No, Martinez was out of the end zone, and McCaffrey was behind where he was too. And I think one of the things that played a factor in that play was that it's snowing outside, and these guys can play on weather. It's not a huge advantage for the home team, but I do think that played a role in McCaffrey not when he instead of reaching out with his arms completely outstretched, he still cradled the ball because he didn't want to lose the ball, and so his inability to reach out and get the ball to the goal line and touch the goal line was really another part of it, because again, he's tough to bring down. No surprise, he doesn't go down in the first shot. He reaches back and tries to extend, but unfortunately in his case, he wasn't able to get back there. But on that drive, what was interesting about get the ball to your best player was I thought that Allen kind of looked away from McCaffrey on a couple of those downs to get them down to the goal line, where once they got inside the 15-yard line, I don't remember how many plays they ran, but it's almost like, how do you not get McCaffrey in space and hope he can juke somebody out and just get it into the end zone? When you get down to that goal line there, then it gets a little bit easier to figure out as far as what's going on. Obviously, the Packers tried when they were down at the goal line. Jamal Williams gets stuffed, and then the Panthers are running McCaffrey in, and he doesn't end up getting in there too. So you take away a little bit of that element of surprise, but who knows? Maybe this will ignite the run defense, and they will have figured something out, or at least now they know they can handle a dynamic back like that. Because as far as and we'll break this down further in a couple of weeks, but as far as the 49ers go, I know they've got Tevin Coleman, but they run the ball well. They run the ball well, so it's going to be another week where they're going to have to step up and do some good things with the run defense.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see what that all looks like tomorrow night. But ultimately, the Packers get the goal line stand. Review says the call on the field stands, which probably best for the referee. I kind of made the joke that he wouldn't make it out of there if he called that a touchdown, because there's just no way. You couldn't see the ball. I still find it amazing that we have all this technology and we're relying on that to figure out where the ball's at. But hey, it works out in Green Bay's favor today when the Packers move to 8-2 and now have a big NFC showdown with the San Francisco 49ers in 2 weeks. That'll end this edition of the show. Be sure to check out our Twitter account. That is @PackerPulse. You can follow Jason, who looks like he's about to rob a gas station, @JasonPerrone. You can follow me. I am @Jacob Westdorf. And check out the YouTube channel. It's @Pulse of the, it's Pulse of the Pack. Check that out. We've got all of our stuff going there. We'll figure out exactly what we want to do as far as bye week coverage and everything like that goes. If something breaks, I suppose that's possible. A little bummed that Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams and Danny Vitale were supposed to have a autograph signing in Waukesha, which is about an hour and a half away from where I live. That had to be rescheduled because I guess their agents didn't realize they were going to be on the bye week, and those guys are not staying in Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Correct.
For a vacationing spot. It's freaking snowing outside, for God's sake. Like, it's November 10th, and there's snow on the ground. That's what it is. The other thing, a very happy Veterans Day to everybody that has served in the military. We had some cool stuff. The flyover today was cool. The parachuting, everything like that was cool. But this show's not possible without the great men and women that have been in our service. So I want to thank you guys first and foremost for that. The Packers are 8-2. We will see you guys when they take on the 49ers. Thanks for listening. Thank you for watching. And, of course, as always,
go Pack, go.